You are tuned to the CWA Civil Rights Talk Show, An Hour of Power. Now here's your host, Errol Minor.
Good morning, Houston. Welcome back to Communication Workers of America, CWA Human Rights Hour Power. We are live and on location at the 2024 CBTU Convention, downtown Houston, Texas. If you're attending the 2024 CBTU Convention, stop by and meet the CWA radio show team that comes to you every Thursday with a justice-filled hour of talk, solidarity, and worker power here on KYOK 1140 AM. And the all-new 106.5 FM. If you're on the go, you can take us with you on kyokradio.org. The city of Houston is so beautiful, and it is certainly has beautiful people. I must give a shout out to Black Glove Transportation of Houston, who brought me safely to the hotel and had snacks in their car. Thank you, Black Glove Transportation, for your excellent service last night. It's almost summer. The days are getting longer, and we have time to get outside and let our union voices be heard. Let our union voices ring in every district from Alaska to Maine, from Texas to Minnesota. Our union brothers and sisters and siblings at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette have been outside for 594 days, 18 months, on the picket lines, and yet while they are striking, they are still churning out the news with facts for you and me. Let's show our support to them by making sure we subscribe to unionprogress.com. Once you subscribe to this free publication, how about going over and donating to their strike fund? Donate to the strike fund at cwa.org/ppg-donate. I just heard someone shout, "When we fight, we win." Our brothers, sisters, and siblings at Maximus are still fighting for a contract. We ask that you continue to support the workers of Maximus and their families at cwa.org/CCW Solidarity Fund. Sit-downers strike. I wonder, has anyone ever heard of this? Recently, I visited my sister, her husband, and other family and love members in Flint, Michigan. While in Flint, we spent time with Lori's, my sister's husband's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Fred and Kimberly Ross, who are proud members of UAW, as well as Mrs. Ross working directly for UAW Region 1D office. When we all get together, we always share union talk, but this time it was so much different. This time I was told about the sit-down strike of Flint, Michigan. And then I was afforded the opportunity to visit Sit-Downers Memorial Park, which is dedicated to the sit-downers and is located behind UAW Region 1D office. I learned that this strike was labeled as the strike heard around the world. So what is it? I'm glad you asked. The 1936 through 1937 Flint sit-down strike was a sit-down strike at the General Motors plant in Flint, Michigan. It changed the United Automobile Workers, UAW, from a collection of small, isolated local unions into a major labor union and led to the unionization of the automobile industry. GM employed 208,981 hourly workers before the Great Depression of 1929 and paid the workers $1,195 annually. After the Great Depression, jobs were increasing, but GM had 30,000 fewer employees than before the Great Depression. GM, even after the Great Depression, was still paying $1,195 annually. The pay was increasing in 1936, but at GM, the pay was stagnant. Work Progress estimated for a family of four, $1,435 was needed. General Motors records document that the annual average for full-time workers was $1,200 to $1,300. Even with the declining pay rates, workers were required to work at a faster pace to make up for the loss from the Great Depression. The United Automobile Workers, UAW labor union, had only just been formed in 1935, and it held its first convention in 1936. Shortly thereafter, the union decided it could not survive by organizing campaigns at smaller plants as it had in the past. Instead, they would organize automobile workers and go after the biggest and most powerful employer, General Motors Corporation. They would do this by focusing on their most valuable plants in Flint, Michigan, which was the heart and nerve center of the automobile industry. The importance of these plants cannot be understated. The production plants in Flint were essential to the multiple lines of GM cars and to the cars of GM's subsidiary companies like Chevrolet and Buick. The great concentration of all auto workers in Flint was not at the body plants, but at Chevrolet and Buick, which employed 14,000 and 16,000 men, respectively, the largest of all General Motors' 60 plus factories. Another Chevrolet factory, plant number 4, would be critical to the sit-down strike as it produced the engines for all Chevrolet cars sold at this time. These plants were vital to production, and strikes would cripple GM production throughout the country. Organizing in Flint was a difficult and dangerous plan. GM controlled city politics in Flint and kept a close eye on outsiders. As Wyndham Mortimer, the first UAW officer put in charge of organizing the campaign in Flint, entered the town, he was noticed. The day after he entered Flint, in early June 1936, he was being followed by people who were probably from the General Motors company. When he went through the front door, the other put his paper down and followed him out into the street. And thereafter, he or one of 2 others always managed to be with him. GM also maintained an extensive network of spies throughout its plants. Mortimer concluded after talking to Flint auto workers that the existing locals, which had only 122 members out of 45,000 auto workers in Flint, were riddled by spies. Accordingly, he decided that the only safe way to organize Flint was simply to bypass these locals. Mortimer, Eric Branoff, Ruth Rutherford, Henry Cross, and Ralph Dale began meeting with Flint auto workers in their homes, keeping the names of the new members a closely guarded secret from others in Flint at UAW headquarters. As the UAW studied its target, it discovered that GM had only 2 factories that produced the dies from which car body components were stamped. One in Flint that produced the parts of Buicks, Pontiacs, and Oldsmobiles, and another in Cleveland that produced Chevrolet parts. The union planned to strike these plants after the new year. Events forced the union to accelerate its plans when the workers of Cleveland's Fisher Body plant went on strike in December 28, 1936, due to 2 brothers being fired from the assembly line. The UAW immediately announced that it would not settle the Cleveland strike until it reached a national agreement with GM covering all of its plants. At the same time, the union made plans to shut down Fisher number 1 in Flint, Michigan. On December 30th at 8 a.m., the union learned that GM was planning to move the dies out of Fisher number 1. UAW lead organizer Bob Travis immediately called a lunchtime meeting at the Union Hall across the street from the plant, explained the situation, and then sent the members across the street to occupy the plant. The Flint sit-down strike began. In a conventional strike, union members leave the plant and establish a picket line to discourage the other employees from entering, thus preventing the employer from operating. In a sit-down strike, the workers physically occupy the plant, keeping management and others out by remaining inside the factory rather than picketing outside of it. Striking workers prevented owners from bringing strike breakers to resume production. It was in some ways easier to maintain the morale of participants in a sit-down than in conventional strikes. Bad weather did not constitute a problem for sit-downers, as it did for the pickets in an outside strike. The Flint sit-down strikers set up their own civil systems within the strike. A mayor and other civic officials were elected by the workers to maintain order within the plant. Departments included organizing recreation, information, postal service, and sanitation. and all rules were enforced by what was called a kangaroo court by the workers. Any person who broke the rules was given a trial. Punishments ranged from washing dishes to expulsion from the plant in the most extreme cases. It was important for the strikers to maintain order in the plant. If property damage occurred, the governor would intervene with the National Guard. And so, in addition to maintaining order, the civic government also ensured a steady stream of supplies from friendly vendors outside the plant. Most of the meals for the approximately 2,000 workers occupying the plant were provided free of charge by a diner across the street. And we must not leave out the wives of the workers. They marched back and forth, bringing their husbands and other men in the plant dinner, lunch, and breakfast. Once the strike had been established in Flint, workers at the General Motors plants joined the strike. December 31, Fisher Body and Chevrolet in Norwood, Ohio. Workers at the Guide Lamp plant in Anderson, Indiana, conducted a sit-down strike. January 4th, sit-down strike in Toledo, Ohio. January 5th, sit-down strike at Chevrolet and Fisher Body in Janesville. January 8th, sit-down strike at the 3,800 worker Cadillac plant in Detroit, organized by Walter Reuther's West Side Local. January 12th, sit-down strike at the Detroit plant. Reuther called the takeover a protest of police brutality in Flint on January 11th. January 13th, a conventional strike at the St. Louis Fisher Body, and Chevrolet followed an unsuccessful attempt at a sit-down strike the prior day. Striking workers were supported by union members from Kansas City. January 25th, reportedly a strike at Oakland, California Fisher's Body and Chevrolet through General Motors attributed stoppage to a lack of materials. Then February 1st, occupation of Chevrolet number 4 plant in Flint. By January 25th, the strike had major secondary effects throughout General Motors' chain of production, leading 50 GM plants to close and suspending work for 150,000 employees. Protests in solidarity with the strike were held at the GM buildings in New York City on February 1st and in Detroit on February 6th. The police, armed with guns and tear gas, attempted to enter the Fisher Body 2 plant on January 11th, 1937. The strikers inside the plant pelted them with hinges, bottles, and bolts. They were able to withstand several waves of attack, eventually ending the standoff. The strikers dubbed the Battle of Running Bulls, a mocking reference to the police. 14 strikers were injured by gunfire during the battle. At the time, Vice President John Nance Garner supported federal intervention to break up the Flint strike, but the idea was rejected by President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. The president urged GM to recognize a union so the plants could reopen. GM obtained a second injunction against the strikers on February 2nd, 1937. GM was granted the injunction by Judge Edward S. Black. Judge Black owned over 3,000 shares of GM. Judge Black was disbarred from this case after the UAW found out about the revelation. The union not only ignored the order, but spread the strike to Chevrolet plant number 4. To avoid tipping its hand, the union let it be known in the hours before the move that it intended to go after another plant in the complex, changing direction only at the last minute. GM, tipped off by an informant within the UAW, was ready and waiting for the union at the other plant and caught completely off guard at plant number 4. The strike ended after 44 days. The development forced GM to bargain with the union. John L. Lewis, president of the United Mine Workers and founder and the leader of the CIO, spoke for the UAW in those negotiations. UAW President Homer Martin was set on a speaking tour to keep him out of the way. GM's representatives refused to be in the same room as the UAWs. So Governor Frank Murphy acted as a courier and intermediary between the two groups. Governor Murphy sent in the Michigan National Guard, not to evict the strikers, but rather to protect them from police and corporate strike breakers. The two parties finally reached an agreement on February 11th, 1937, on a one-page agreement that recognized the UAW as the exclusive bargaining representative for GM's employees who were members of the union for the next 6 months. The agreement that GM consented to was to rehire workers who were a part of the strike, allow workers to wear buttons and other symbols that represented unions, and grant 6 months of negotiations in the plants that participated in a strike to UAW. As short as this agreement was, it gave the UAW instant legitimacy. The workers there also got a 5% increase in pay and were allowed to talk about the union during lunch. The UAW capitalized on that opportunity, signing up 100,000 GM employees and building the union strength through grievance strikes at GM's plants through the country. In the next year, UAW membership grew from 30,000 to 500,000 members. Employees of other car manufacturers such as Ford joined as the entire industry was rapidly unionized. As later noted by the BBC, the strike was heard around the world. The sit-down strike projected a principal weapon of mass organization in the labor industry, projecting nearly 5,000 strikes to come within the next year, giving labor workers newfound unionization regardless of race or education status, and creating opportunities for membership agreements, payroll negotiations, and even government protections for workers. The sit-down strike provoked a newfound impact in the labor industry, giving the workers a newfound confidence in joining unions and to use their voices. So let's give a shout out to the sit-down workers of Flint, Michigan. Next up, we have Makia. It's Period Poverty Awareness Week. Good morning, Makia.
Good morning, Arrow. Good morning, KYOK Radio. And good morning, Houston. I just love you, Houston. I'm so happy to be here and to talk about Period Poverty Awareness Week. A lot of people don't know the struggles that menstruating individuals go through. And I just thought that it'll be a great time because we're in the week to bring that out to you all. So what is period poverty? Period poverty is the inability to afford or access the necessary period products needed to manage a period. Half of the population menstruates, and we all know plenty of people that have a period, but not everyone knows that 1 in 4 people struggle to purchase period supplies due to lack of income. This is also called, again, period poverty. And chances are we each know someone who has experienced this need, a neighbor, a coworker, or a friend. Now, no student should have to miss school, no adult should have to miss work, and no person should have to miss out on daily life because they are unable to afford the material basic necessities they require to thrive. A study conducted back in 2021 revealed that 2 in 5 people have struggled to purchase period products. The study also uncovered how period poverty is disproportionately impacting Black and Latina people. Over 1/3, which is about 38%, of low-income women report missing work, school, or similar events due to lack of access to period supplies. Now, period poverty can also cause serious health problems. When having a period, people need access to appropriate supplies such as pads, tampons, menstrual cups, and so on. However, when these supplies are unaffordable or otherwise inaccessible, people use what they can find. According to another study, makeshift supplies include newspapers, rags, leaves, and even breadcrumbs. The resulting health issues like infections can be debilitating and even fatal. Even when people do have access to reusable pads or cups, they can be hard to clean without water or electricity or gas. Now, period poverty has stigma and discrimination effect, and it affects people's mental health too. Period poverty doesn't only impact your physical health. The stress of trying to access appropriate supplies, as well as the stigma and discrimination surrounding bleeding, can cause severe anxiety and depression. One study in Nepal revealed that girls were forced to sleep outside or in separate huts while having their periods, creating severe psychological outcomes. And even in places without such extreme practices, stigma still exists in the embarrassment people feel when buying supplies, the coded phrases for periods, and the general lack of education about menstruation. This sends a message that periods are shameful and disgusting. I know when I first got my cycle, it was on April Fool's Day, 2004, and I will never forget it because I got my cycle in class and a kid in my class pulled me to the side and he told me, and I was so grateful for him because I knew that had someone else or the whole class saw it, I'd have been a laughing stock or they would have mocked me for getting my period, which is just a natural occurrence. But again, it was on April Fool's Day. So I called my mom at work and I'm like, hey, mom, I got my period. She said, ha ha, April Fools, don't call me back at work. And hung up in my face. So, it's very hard for us menstruating folk to deal with that. And in 2019, a 14-year-old Kenyan schoolgirl died by suicide after allegedly being shamed by her teacher for having her period in class. The teacher reportedly called the girl dirty and expelled her from the classroom after she stained her clothes. So the menstrual stigma is a negative perception of menstruation and those who menstruate. It can lead to ostracism from basic activities such as socializing and eating certain foods, and that's a form of gender discrimination. The Alliance for Period Supplies created Period Poverty Awareness Week to draw attention to the issue of period poverty and the negative impact it has on people who menstruate. We encourage everyone to join the movement and become advocates to help end period poverty. So start a conversation about period poverty, host a virtual product drive, donate to an Alliance for Period Supplies or a local program, or do one of many other things from right at home. So just make sure that you take the time out to be conscious of the effects of menstruation that menstruating people have, and be kind and helpful, and also fight to get that for free for people. Like it shouldn't, there's no reason why basic human needs should be at such a high cost for menstruating women and men and individuals. Back to you, Errol.
Thank you so much, Makia. Thank you so much again, Makia, for bringing awareness to Period Poverty Week. We are live and on location at the 2024 CBTU Convention downtown Houston, Texas. It is so wonderful to be here at the CBTU Convention.
And you know what, Errol? It's our 1-year anniversary, and I cannot believe that you nor Reginald has gotten me a gift, a cake, a cupcake, or nothing. It marks 1 year since we all met right at the CBTU conference last year, and I am just shocked and appalled. They didn't give me a cupcake, a sticker, or nothing. And the convention brought us together.
You're right. It absolutely did. Come on in here, Reginald.
That is definitely a tragedy, and perhaps we can have a Houston, Texas dinner tonight.
That's right. We'll go to dinner or something tonight at CBTU. CBTU brought us all together last year in New Orleans, Louisiana. As a matter of fact, that was my first time attending CBTU, and it was an awesome experience to be there in New Orleans and to see all of the information that CBTU provides to the labor movement. Well, let's talk about the history of CBTU and who it is, what they do. It is very crucial. First of all, we have a lot of acronyms when we're talking about the labor union. And CBTU stands for the Coalition of Black Trade Unionists. And on last week, we talked about one of its founders and the president emeritus, Mr. William Bill Lucy, who just turned 90 years old last year in November. So let's get off into the history of CBTU since we're at the 2024 CBTU convention downtown Houston, Texas. And for those that are listening to the radio show today, and if you're at the convention, please stop by our booth or the radio show while we're here and meet the CWA radio show team this morning. Now, since the earliest days of this nation, when democracy was built on racial exploitation, Black workers have risked their lives to protect and empower their communities through agitation, collective action, and faith. The Coalition of Black Trade Unionists proudly carries that tradition into the 21st century. CBTU is a fiercely independent voice of Black workers within the trade union movement, challenging organized labor to make more relevant to the needs and aspirations of Black and poor workers. One of every 5 Black workers, 20% belong to a union, and Black union workers earn 40% more than non-union Black workers. In the political arena, CBTU has leveraged the vast resources of unions to mobilize Black voters to influence elections and public policy at every level of government. CBTU is an inclusionary organization that aligns itself with civil rights organizations throughout the world. And long before globalization caught the attention of America's working families, CBTU was challenging the gaping disparity of wealth, power, and living standards throughout the world, especially in African and Caribbean countries. CBTU was also the first American labor organization to actively oppose white minority rule in South Africa. CBTU has been the catalyst for actions against other human rights violators as well. In September of 1972, more than 1,200 Black union officials and rank and file members representing 37 different international and national unions met in Chicago for 2 days to discuss the role of Black trade unionists in the labor movement. 5 Black labor leaders, alarmed that the AFL-CIO Executive Council had taken a neutral position in the 1972 presidential election between incumbent Richard Nixon and challenger George McGovern, called this founding conference of the Coalition of Black Trade Unionists. Those 5 leaders who formed the initial steering committee of CBTU were William Bill Lucy, Nelson Jack Edwards, William Simmons, Charles A. Hayes, Cleveland Robinson, and all of them represented AFSCME, UAW, the United Food and Commercial Workers Union, as well as the Distributive Workers of America District 65. Turnout at the initial meeting, which took place September 23rd, 24th, 1972, at the LaSalle Hotel, constituted the largest single gathering of Black unionists in the history of the American labor movement. It was a bold, empowering action. While the impetus for the Chicago conference was the presidential campaign, the most significant development was the establishment of a permanent organization, the Coalition of Black Trade Unionists. The delegates made it clear that Black workers were ready to share in the power of labor movement at every level of its policymaking. CBTU would be a progressive forum for Black workers to bring forth their special issues within unions, as well as act as a bridge between organized labor and the Black community. The Coalition of Black Trade Unionists consisted of members from 57 international and national unions, with more than 60 chapters across the country and Canada. CBTU seeks to fulfill the dream of those Black trade unionists, both living and deceased, who throughout this century have courageously and unremittedly studied to build a national movement that would bring all our strengths and varied talents to bear in the unending effort to achieve economic, political, and social justice for every American. The basic objectives of CBTU is to improve economic development and employment opportunities for Black workers, work within the framework of the trade union movement to provide a voice and vehicle for greater Black and minority participation. to increase union involvement in voter registration, voter education, and voter turnout projects. Organize unorganized workers, actively support civil rights and civic groups working to improve living and working conditions in the Black community. Increase effectively political alliances between labor, churches, and the general community. CBTU will continue to support job training initiatives and programs aimed at reducing the Black youth unemployment rate, which consistently hovers around 50%. Recognizing the correlation between youth unemployment and education, CBTU chapters continue their support for the public school systems and oppose reduced funding for educational projects and programs, particularly those involving inner city schools. Since its founding conference in 1972, CBTU's stature among African American workers has grown. Currently, more than 50 different international and national unions are represented in CBTU, with 50 plus chapters nationwide and one in Ontario, Canada. CBTU is maximizing the strength and influence of Black workers in unions and empowering their communities. Membership in the CBTU is strictly voluntary. Only active or retired members of bona fide unions can join CBTU. So this is the history of CBTU, and we welcome all of you to the 2024 CBTU Convention Conference in downtown Houston, Texas. Up next, we have Mr. Reginald Small here with us today. You're tuned into KYOK 1140 AM, 92.3. I'm sorry, the all-new 106.5 FM Communication Workers of America, CWA Human Rights, Our Power. And if you must leave, take us with you on kyokradio.org. Good morning, Reginald.
Good morning, Errol Minor, and good morning, KYOK radio listeners. I am and I remain Reginald Small, CWA Civil Rights and Equity Chairperson. We are in the home of our own CWA International President, Claude Cummings, Jr. And it is most appropriate and my honor to spotlight him today. And I've said it once, I've said it many times, that this is indeed my favorite part of the program, spotlighting one of our own. But before I do that, Micaiah mentioned earlier today that this is our anniversary, the trio of trouble, good trouble that is, actually came together as activists in New Orleans at the CBTU. So happy anniversary to both of you.
Happy anniversary.
And I will continue on here. So again, my favorite part of the program, and today it's only appropriate because we are in the home of Houston, Texas, that our international president, Claude Cummings Jr. is from Houston, Texas, and we're going to spotlight Claude today. Claude has served as an at-large member of the executive board of the Communication Workers of America since 2007. And in 2023 in St. Louis, he was elected as the first African-American international president of the Communication Workers of America. Before that, he was the vice president in District 6, which Houston is a part of District 6. And District 6 covers the MOCAT, Missouri, Oklahoma, Kansas, Arkansas, and Texas. He was also appointed to lead the Human Rights Department for the National CWA, where he is still very, very much an intricate part. Prior to becoming an elected union official, President Cummings was employed by Southwestern Bell Telephone Company in 1973, now known as AT&T, and worked as a frame attendant and communications technician, maintaining systems for NASA, among other corporate customers. Prior to his election to District 6 Vice President, he was president of CWA Local 6222, representing more than 8,000 members. He was first elected president of the local in 1999, previously serving as vice president and holding other leadership positions in the local. President Cummings was the first Black male elected to all of these positions. Since being elected as the District 6 Vice President, Cummings has led negotiations of CWA bargaining committees across the district that have led to wage increases, better medical benefits, sign-in bonuses, job security, and additional jobs for the bargaining unit members. He has served as first vice president of the Houston chapter of NAACP, recently elected second vice president, Texas State NAACP Conference, the Labor Committee for the National NAACP, member of the Texas AFL-CIO Executive Board, board member for Push Democracy Forward, which is a faith-based nonpartisan organization that focuses on protecting our democracy. He is a member of the A. Philip Randolph Institute, where he serves on the executive board, also a member of CBTU, in which he's actually on stage now speaking here at the 53rd Coalition of Black Trade Unionists Conference. He's a leading voice in local, state, and national politics. He's worked for the passage of state laws to enable AT&T to provide video services to customers, which led to the hiring of thousands of new unionized technicians across the country to install the new video service. He also served as a delegate to past Democratic National Conventions. He is a longtime community activist, supported and directing civil rights efforts. He has been a strong advocate for jobs with livable wages in this country, addressing the Congressional Black Caucus in Washington, D.C., urging them to vote against trade bills that move jobs out of this country, adversely affecting communities and labor unions. He often meets with civil rights leaders to address the need for labor and the civil rights movement to work together to encourage Congress to pass pro-labor legislation that will help build the middle class in this country. Over the years, he has worked with other organizations to organize robust and innovative get out the vote programs in order to elect worker-friendly candidates across the nation. His dedication has led him to work with Reverend William Barber and the Poor People's Campaign, and with great pride represented CWA at the 50th anniversary of Bloody Sunday, speaking at the foot of the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama. He is a 1970 graduate of Kashmere High School, where he was senior class president, graduating with honors. Following graduation, he attended Tuskegee Institute. He is married to Ruth Cummings. They have 3 children, grandchildren, and a great-grandchild. It is again my honor to spotlight our own International Communication Workers of America President, Mr. Claude Cummings Jr. And he cannot be here today because, again, he is actually on stage right now speaking to the delegates of the Coalition of Black Trade Unionists Conference. And I will turn it back to you, Errol, after that spotlight. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Reginald. We are live and on location at the 2024 CBTU Convention in downtown Houston, Texas. If you're attending the 2024 CBTU Convention, stop by and meet the CWA radio show team that comes to you every Thursday with a justice-filled hour of talk, solidarity, and worker power here on KYOK 1140 AM and the all-new 106.5 FM. If you are on the go, remember you can always take us with you on kyokradio.org. Well, since we are at the 2024 CBTU convention, let's talk about what's going on here today. They have some awesome classes, and even when I attended in New Orleans, or when we all attended in New Orleans, there were some awesome classes going on there. So today and the upcoming, we have classes that will deal with emerging leaders, style, and vision. But first and foremost, we must also recognize one of our very own who came on last week, Dominic Melvin. He came on last week, and he's over the CBTU under 40. He has a general session today as a matter of fact, with an under 40 panel at 1:30 p.m. in the Texas Ballroom. So if you can stop by, go in and see him and let him know that you all heard us talk about him on the CWA radio show. Now, today we also have some scheduled workshops. Well, I'm sorry, the workshops are coming up on Saturday. So let's talk about what's actually going to be going on. There is one that I think all of us, since we deal with human rights, examining discrimination and harassment in the workplace, that's something that all of us at some point in some time have dealt with, and we need to learn about that.
Yeah, I'm also interested in the pre-apprenticeship programs. Like we had the teacher on last week during Teachers Appreciation Week to discuss blue-collar jobs and apprenticeship programs, and just telling our kids that there are other alternatives to being successful outside of college, and these pre-apprenticeship programs help them get on that path. So I'm super excited about that. I'm also excited about that golf tournament today. I got my good golf shoes, and Reginald is gonna be my caddy, and I'm gonna go out there and work on my backswing.
Well, all right
It's a
then.
good time.
You got it. Yeah. And yesterday, actually, I believe it was on Tuesday, we had a leadership training that was a very inspirational, very motivating leadership training. It lasted 4 hours. It was actually absolutely 7 hours actually, and it was amazing.
7 hours and it felt like 4.
Yes, and then we had one of the things that sets CBTU apart, I believe, is that they give attention to their first-time attendees. And they had a full reception. We had a full reception here for the first-time attendees, where we actually took a lot of people, and it felt actually that we got to know each other in a personal way. And after that, we attended line dancing class.
Really?
Yeah.
Not line dancing with Reggie and his 2 left feet.
Yeah, my 2 left feet. I was able to count them out.
Really?
Yes, it was absolutely amazing.
I wished I could have been here on yesterday. I did have a late flight, so I got here kind of late, and I missed out on some of the things. But today I'm going to get in everything that I possibly can on today. And let's even talk about what went on that will go on later on today. And that's the CBTU Town Hall, Hip Hop Entertainment and Activism, how the culture and organizing intersect.
Yeah, when you think back to way back when with Public Enemy and Fight the Power, and how they had a voice for activism in music, to today with artists like Kendrick Lamar and Beyonce and other artists that are standing up for activism and human rights in their music, it's just great to show how, music has taken on a different voice and a different perspective, and they're using the platforms that they have to speak to people and to fight for our rights. I love it. I can't wait for this. This is actually one of the things I was most interested about coming for, is this particular town hall. It's gonna be great.
Yeah, I think that is going to be quite moving, and I'm going to actually attend that, because when you think of activism and civil rights, you actually think more of the gospel flair. And me, I think about the contributions that were made by like Mahalia Jackson, the fundraising and getting out the word, even for the March on Washington. So this is going to be just a little bit of a good shift for me.
All right. And then I also noticed that we have some heavy hitters here. Danielle Brown, Black Votes Matter, Tracy Lee, artist and a lawyer, Young Guru, sound engineer, music producer, and professor, and then Chris Williams of ESPN. And let's not leave out the moderator, Reverend Mark Thompson. So I guarantee you it's going to be a great time tonight at 6:30 p.m. And by all means, are you going to take part in the choir rehearsal, Reginald?
Not this year. I won't take part in the choir rehearsal, but I guarantee you I will be attending the musical on, I believe it's on Saturday, on Saturday evening. And then there's always a move-in church service on Sunday. I will be a part of those things.
And I just can't wait for the women's committee luncheon, just being surrounded by all of those powerful, strong female women leaders in organizing and in labor. It's going to be so great for me. You know what they say, you always surround yourself with women that are doing things that make sense and that are moving forward, and people that are above you in some way, like some people that you can learn from. And I love just being in that room. There's so much wisdom there, so much love. So I'm just super excited for the women's committee luncheon later tomorrow afternoon.
And one of the things that I like about the CBTU conference is it has a great atmosphere.
It does.
It's like a family reunion,
It's a
doesn't it?
family reunion, a big family reunion. Everybody just comes up and talk to you. What have some of the things that you guys have experienced while you were here in this last few hours?
Well, like you said, it feels like a family reunion. It doesn't feel weird. It doesn't feel awkward. It feels like a safe space to be yourself, and then also have the conversations that you're having in your day-to-day activism with other like-minded individuals that look like you, that feel like you, that have the same struggles as you, that know what it's like to be you. And that's my favorite part. It's like it's like coming home.
And one of the things I also I recognized even last year in my first opportunity to attend CBTU, I noticed that it was very inclusive.
Yes.
I was just, one of the things that just blew me away was learning about the international stance that CBTU had. And I was so enamored until I went to a class that dealt with the African dialect, trying to just get an upgrade on pay equity.
Yes.
It was so awesome. Now, I know here in America, we are looking at large numbers per hour, but to hear them just fight for $2.35.
Yes.
That was, I was just like, oh my God. And it really kind of hit home to where you really have to be thankful for what we've already accomplished.
And you know what, speaking of that, Errol, we are actually still fighting that, especially in our tech, nonprofit, and media sectors. And right now, if you go to CWA-union.org/pay equity, you'll be taken to our CWA internal pay equity page. You can fill out a survey there that helps us to highlight and show that, you know what, despite what these people are saying on their during Juneteenth and what they're saying during Women's History Month, we're still not getting fair and equal pay. So again, if you go online to CWA-union.org/pay equity, you'll be able to fill out that survey and help us to exploit these bad employers that are not paying our women and our people of color what they deserve for doing the same job as everybody else.
Now, for you all that don't know, Makia is our pay equity guru. I could just get off air myself and just let her run with that, because she can always talk about pay equity and everything that that goes on with it. And even on just last week, we learned about the Audubon Society, where they were not paying people of color, women, a fair and equitable wage. So this is something that continues to fight on, and it seems as if every generation fights and for rights. And I've always said, and I know you guys probably get tired of me saying this, but freedom is a consistent and constant fight for a right. The things that we are enjoying, we have to fight for it, and every generation has to fight for something. So, and that's what I like about CBTU. CBTU reaches out to all genres or all nationalities to be able to fight for human rights. That's what it boils down to, fighting for human rights. We must remember that human rights are simply civil rights. But if we fight for our human rights, give us our human rights, and then our civil rights also will fall into perspective.
Well, you know what? It's time for trivia. Now, listen, we are in person. It's our anniversary, so it's only right that Reginald and Errol go against each other today. And today we're going to do a CBTU style. We gave you the history of CBTU in the beginning of our segment. We've been talking about it all day. So if Reginald loses today, well, I don't know what to do with him at this point.
Well, you better wait.
It's rigged.
All right, so y'all ready?
Let me get my quick note.
All right, and you know what? Unfortunately, Timia is busy during the conference today, so we won't be having that silent bell during our Youth Investor of the Week segment. But shout out to Timia, we miss you today.
Yes, we do miss you, Timia.
All right, so if you guys, if this is your first time listening and you don't know the rules of our power trivia, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna ask a sequence of 5 questions. You will have, your name is your buzzer. When you say your name, I'll call on you. You'll have a chance to answer the question. Whoever's name I hear first, Reginald, is the person who will be allowed to answer the question. If the question is answered incorrectly, then their opponent has a chance to steal the point. Whoever has the most answers correct out of the 5 questions will win something Arrow will buy us from Target, because I'm tired of the Dollar General and I want my gifts from Target now. So are you guys ready?
We're ready.
Ready?
All right, first question. What year was the founding CBTU conference?
Reginald.
Okay, Reginald.
1972.
All right, that's 1 for Reginald. Second question. Name the 5 leaders that formed CBTU.
Errol.
All right, Errol. You gotta say all 5 now.
It was William Bill Lucy, Nelson Jack Edwards, William Simmons, Charles Hayes, and Cleveland Robertson.
And I'm sorry, y'all. Reginald is cutting up today. He doesn't want Errol to get any questions right. So all right, next question. That's 1 for Errol, 1 for Reginald. All right, next question. What does CBTU stand for?
Reginald.
Okay, Reginald.
Gosh. Coalition of Black Trade Unionists.
All right, now look, he's on the road today. He said we in Texas, we in District 6. He's not losing today.
In my home district.
All right, next question. How many Black workers are in organized labor?
Reginald.
Okay, Reginald.
Over 2 million. 2.5 million.
All right, now look, Reginald won, y'all. Oh my goodness, is it a full?
Well,
Oh my gosh.
I just let him win today since we're in his hometown or in his home state, I should say, because I know he's going to show us a good time in Texas while we're here, and he knows all of the good eating spots. So therefore, we had to let him win. So he will just feel jolly all day today.
Whatever.
So thank you. So that's right. Whatever it takes. And I wish you guys could see him in this clean suit he has on. So all of those CBTU delegates, please stop him and let him know how good he looks with his red sneakers on. I mean, he is throwing down today.
He is shot.
he is front row sharp.
And you know what, Houston, if you guys don't get a chance to come see us this time, make sure you come back and see us on August 11th through the 14th at the CWA National Human Rights Conference downtown at the Houston Hilton Americas Hotel. We'll be here, and you need to be there or be square so that you can come meet us and have a good time and learn about all things human rights and all things CWA. Again, it's open to all unions and all individuals. You could go to our social media pages, National CWA Human Rights, and you can register there. And we look forward to seeing you soon.
That's right. Please, we will see you soon on August 11th through 14th at the Hilton Americas right downtown, Houston, Texas. And I got an opportunity to sit outside yesterday and last night, and I just want to let you guys know it was so peaceful downtown. As we come down to the final minutes of the show, our union brothers, sisters, and siblings at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette have been outside for 18 months on the picket lines. And yet while they are striking, they are still churning out the news with facts for you and me. Let's show our support to them by making sure we subscribe to unionprogress.com. Once you subscribe to this free publication, how about going over and donating to their strike fund? Donate at the strike fund at cwa.org/ppg-donate. I just heard someone shout, "We are one." That's right. We are one. Our brothers, sisters, siblings at Maximus are still fighting for a contract. And since you are in a giving spirit, because it is better to give than receive, journey on over to cwa.org/CCW Solidarity Fund and help the workers and their families of Maximus. And again, we must plug our Human Rights Conference, August 11th through 14th in the beautiful Houston, Texas, right here. So we expect to see your face in the place. And if you have not made your reservations, make them today. We thank all of our guests, our resident guests this morning. An hour is not long enough to be with you, and a week is too long to be away from you. You have been tuned into the CWA Human Rights, Justice, Our Power broadcast. I hope something you heard today has inspired you to take action toward creating positive change in the world. Every person has the power to make a difference, no matter how small. And by working together, we can create a world where human rights are respected and valued. So I encourage you, each of you in the listening audience, to reflect on your role in promoting human rights to effect change in your communities and beyond. Know that you are not alone in your quest for a more just and equitable world. When faced with injustice, it can be easy to lose hope and give up. But remember, justice may be slow, like the truth, but when it finally comes, it will stand. Until next Thursday, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, right here on KYOK 1140 a.m. and the all new 106.5 FM, KYOKradio.org. And happy anniversary once again to Reginald and my Kia.